Good. Hello, hello. So today we're building a full stack application, CRUD application using Next.js on the front end, Convex as our database, TypeScript, and Tailwind CSS for styling. What I have is a CRUD project that you're looking at that represents the dashboard, and the website will eventually be called the Study Buddy. And I've gone ahead and built the initial backend or the starter backend, and we'll talk through the additional schemas and things that we're going to be doing. But we're basically building a study buddy that's going to give us the ability to enter a course, a unit, different lessons, quizzes, and we can add all of this information ourselves. And I'm going to start with just the basic CRUD, and each day we'll go live and we'll add on to what we're currently building. So just to kind of go do a quick demonstration of what we already have in place. We have a Next.js application, and we're not using any frameworks or to help with styling, just Tailwind CSS. On the left, we have our navigation bar, and on click, we get the link to be distinguished if we're on that particular route. So right now I'm on the dashboard route. That's the only thing I've built. However, if I click on learn, it takes me to the learn page, and you can see that also updated in the URL. So I'll click back on dashboard. You see that we have the link highlighted to distinguish that we're on the dashboard page. Created a reusable component to give some text to the page so that we can let the user know what page they're on and kind of give some details on what they can do. Then we have the add course button, which I'll demonstrate in just a moment. And we also have the build or the foundation of a data table that's going to allow us to enter in all of our courses, how many units are in each course. Eventually, we'll add categories as we build this out. We also have the ability to delete a course, which we'll demonstrate in just a moment. And not just yet, but in upcoming videos, we are going to add the ability to select and deselect different courses from the table that we want to delete, or that we want to do something with, filter or whatever it is, but we'll talk more about that later. So just to kind of demonstrate how the project works, if we click on add course, we get a notification that a new course has been created, and then we get a little bit of work on the back end, and it redirects us to the individual course page. From here, we have the ability to click the back arrow and go back to the home route, or the dashboard route, excuse me. And we also see the title that was created based on us clicking add course. So when we add a course, we're not going to type out the title. It's just going to redirect us to the individual course page where we have the ability to update the title. And on the rest of the page, we'll eventually include the units, lessons, quizzes, flashcards, etc. We're going to make this a full-blown study buddy, if you will, that you can really use to help study for classes or a project at work or something at work that you need to know, or whatever it may be. You have the ability to do so. So if we want to update the title, if we click on the pencil or the edit icon, we get a transition with the input that lets us enter in or update the title. And we can also click the X to cancel it. So let's just say we want to change this and say the title of this course is going to be Java, one of my favorite programming languages. And if we click on the green check mark, it now updates that the title is now Java. And if we click the back arrow, it goes back to the dashboard route, and you can see that the course name Java is now listed in our data table. If we refresh the screen, you'll also notice that Java is still here. That is because it is connected to the database, and we are fully connected. So we have demonstrated the ability to create a course, update a course by adjusting the name of the course that we just created. But we also have the ability to delete a course as well, which will complete out the CRUD functionality. So if I just click the trash can icon, you notice that we immediately get the content to be deleted. That is because, again, we're using Convex on the back end, and this is a real-time database. But we no longer have the course listed within our data table. And if we refresh the screen, excuse me, you'll notice that we got a little loading indicator, and I'll show you how we've done that using the different states. And we also have I can put that back on. We have the courses in the data table listed as we would prefer. So this is something you think you may be interested in building. And again, this is going to be day one of multiple days building out this project. Feel free to follow along with me, ask any questions if you have some. I have the chat up and going. Otherwise, I'm going to stop this one from working and we're going to build this project from scratch. So I'll go ahead and close it out and we'll open up the prior terminal or VS Code. We'll stop it from running. I think Convex is running too. I'm pretty sure it is. Okay. And I'm going to just open up another VS Code. We can close the old one out. And on the far left where it reads Explore, if you're using VS Code along with me, if we click on the Explorer icon, we have the ability to open a folder. Let's go ahead and click on it. And it's going to redirect us to our hard drive. I'm going to store my project on the desktop. It's a little easier for me. Feel free to store yours wherever you like. So we'll just create a new folder and we'll call this Study Buddy. And we'll select that as the folder. Now we have our root directory inside of VS Code. So when we install the project, we're going to install it within this particular directory, not an additional one. So a shortcut to open up the terminal in VS Code is to press Control and J. Now open this up a little bit and zoom in so you can see a little better. And to install a Next.js application, we'll just type in the command npx create next app. At latest, we'll press the space bar. And to install it in the current directory, we'll just press dot. Otherwise, you would need to just specify what directory you want to install the project in. Then press enter. So for this project, we're going to say yes to TypeScript, yes to ESLint, yes to Tailwind, yes to the no to the SRC directory. We don't need it. Yes to the app router, no to the turbo pack, and no to the import alias. And we'll give this a few minutes to finish installing. So I'll tell you what, while it is installing, I'm going to go ahead and let's see. I'm going to access my GitHub because there's some boiler code that I just want to copy and not necessarily have to worry about typing some of this out. And I'll make sure that I have the repo in the description for those that wish to take a look at the code and make it your own, if you will. Then the other thing, okay, so it is done installing, and you see we have a Next.js 15 project in the root directory. The main thing that I want to do before we move on to install our database is to distinguish or set the package manager to 10.5.2. So if you go to your package.json, this is kind of like the root of your project that kind of tells you everything that you have installed, what versions, and kind of lets you know what you have that you can leverage within the project. And if you are missing certain dependencies or just curious if something actually took, you can always review your package.json. So what I want to do in this project is just specify the package manager. And the reason for this is because with the latest version of Next.js or React, not all the dependencies are compatible with this version just yet. So it's best to kind of set the package manager at a point where the most dependencies will work, or at least the dependencies that you need to use for your project will work. You could explore using Docker, which can kind of help with this in the future. And we'll add Docker in the upcoming months. I enjoy coding or using it as well, but for this project, we're just going to set the package manager, and we'll close this file out. The other thing I like to do is remove the boiler from the global CSS. And I like to just start with some preferred styling. This isn't necessarily relevant to the project, but if you're following along, I would suggest that you at least just add this in. It'll make a little more sense as we continue to build out the project. So in the global CSS, we're going to distinguish or set the height and the width of the entire project. And I'm also going to set the text size to small. So we'll say HTML body or HTML, comma, body, comma, root, and the app. These items, we want to set the height to 100% and the width to 100%. And we'll distinguish the text size to be apply text small. Click save, and we'll close out the global CSS. Go to the package, or excuse me, we'll go into the app directory, and I want to update the root file so that our home page no longer has the boiler code from Next, but it has the code that I want to type in it. So inside of the page.tsx that is within the root, or excuse me, that is within the app directory, let's remove all of the code that is currently within the return statement parentheses, and we're going to start fresh with our own div. So we'll go ahead and type a div, and within the div, we'll just add home page so we can have some text on screen. And we'll remove the import image because we won't need that for this project. So before we start up our application, let's go ahead and connect it to the database. For today's project, we'll be using Convex. And I'm already logged in to Convex. So if you don't already have an account, you could set one up for free, and you can follow this project alone at no additional cost. So it's free to establish an account with Convex. So be on the lookout. Well, not be on the lookout, but go ahead and set one up if you are following along. And once you're logged in, this is the dashboard view, but we're going to go to the Convex docs. And if you search for it in Google, it should be the second option, the Next.js Quick Start. Let's go ahead and click on that link. And this is going to take us to how to install Convex in our Next.js application. Very, very quick and simple. So if we scroll down, we've already created the app. Now we need to install Convex, and we can do that by npm I convex or install Convex. And this is the package that's going to provide the interface that we're going to be working with Convex from our React application. So I'm just going to copy this, head back to the terminal and VS Code, and we'll paste it in. And then next up, we need to set up a development environment. And to do that, we'll just type in npx convex dev. So we'll head back to the terminal, and it just completed installing Convex. Now we'll install npx convex dev. And it's going to ask us, do we want to set up a new project or choose an existing one? Let's go ahead and set up a brand new project. So we'll click new project. Feel free to name this whatever you like. I'm going to name it my live study buddy. And press enter. For this project, we're going to use cloud development. We'll give it a few minutes to finish installing, and then it should begin to run our functions. Yes, indeed. We can go ahead and close this out for right now. The other cool thing that it done for us is it installed a Convex directory. This is going to serve basically as our backend API, where we'll write our code to interact with our database and connect the back to the front end. So if we wanted, we could go ahead and seed our project with some sample data, but we're not going to take that approach. We're going to manually create well, not manually, but we're going to go ahead and set up a quick CRUD project just to make sure that everything is working properly in just a moment. So before we jump into the CRUD project, we do need to wrap our application with the Convex client provider. So we'll just copy this naming convention as listed here. Go back to our VS Code, and in the root directory, we'll add a folder named components. In it, we'll add a file, and we'll just paste in the code that we just copied, or excuse me, the name that we just copied. And if we go back to the Convex docs, we can just copy the client provider exactly how it is and paste it into the client provider.tsx file. And according to the docs, what we need to do next is wrap our application, or excuse me, wrap the children of the body with the client provider. So we'll go to our root layout, and at the top, we'll type in import, curly braces, capital C for convex, and we'll begin to type out convex. And as we're typing in client, you should see a few options, one of which should be @/components/convex client provider. This is the file that we just created. So we'll arrow down to it and press enter. Now we have the client provider within our main layout.tsx file. So let's copy the children that is within parentheses inside the body. We'll copy it and delete it. Now we want to bring in the client provider. And as we begin to type it out, it's going to be, or should be, one of the very first, if not the first option. We'll close it and paste in the children, and the error message or warning should now be no longer there. So that means that we have successfully wrapped our application with the client provider. If we head back to the docs, we're now ready to start displaying data from our database. But before we do that, we'll need to set up our functions in order to interact with our database, or excuse me, in order to connect our front-end application to our back-end database. So in order to set it up, the first thing I like to do is just go ahead and establish a model. And I'm going to use the same model that we'll eventually use later on in the project just for some simplicity purposes. So inside of the Convex directory, let's add a file named course.ts, and that's course.ts. Now, what I want to do is just make sure that our project is working. We'll worry about the styling and the functionality of it later on, but I just want to make sure this is working first. So what we'll need to do is bring in some mutations and query, and this is going to come from the generated Convex server. So we'll go import mutation, and I'm also going to bring in query, which is going to help us query the database. And this is going to come from /convex, yep, /_generated /server. Okay. And then the next one that we'll eventually need, but we're not going to use right now, I'm just going to go ahead and bring it in, is V for value. And that's going to come from convex /values. There we go. So first, what I want to do is create a GET request to make sure that we can get information from the database and display it onto our home screen. So we'll type out export const create course. This is the name of our API that we'll be interacting with. And because we want to utilize it outside of this file, we'll need to export it. And we'll be using the mutation, which is the way you query a database according to the documentation. So if you go to database and you go to, this is reading data, writing data. This information is listed here. Matter of fact, you probably could copy this exactly, and this should take care of it because this is basically the exact same code that we're going to be using. So I think to make it easier, we'll just type it out. We'll minimize this, and we'll say the arguments that we'll be looking to get. For right now, it's just going to be the title, and that will be a string. Then we need the handler, and that will be a asynchronous request. And we'll pass in ctx and args because that is a argument. We'll need to establish the inside of this handler, we'll need to set up or destructure the database from the ctx. Now we want to insert a course within the database. So we'll create a const named course, and I'm going to name this course ID because remember, we're going to be redirecting this course once the user clicks create. So I need to send the ID back to the front end so we can utilize it to redirect the user to that individual course page. So we'll say await and establish the database connection, and we want to use the method insert, and we're going to be inserting courses, courses, yep. And the second piece to that is we'll be passing in the arguments, and the main one is title, and this is going to be args.title because we're using this will help us set up the connection to the database, and the argument is what we're getting back from the user, and that should be a comma, sorry. And I also want to capture the created at, created, yep, and that is going to be date.now. And we'll also want to capture updated at just for record keeping purposes, and we'll say date.now and make sure we call it. And then last but certainly not least, we need to make sure that we return this course ID so that we can leverage it to redirect the user to the individual course page. So with this, we have the ability to create a course. Now let's set up the function to get all courses. And that will be an export const get course. This is a query because we're looking for something. We're not mutating or adding anything. We're just getting all of the courses. And for this, we only need to get the handler because, yeah, should be async. And we're passing in CTX. Inside of the handler, we'll create a const named courses and set it equal to await ctx.db. And then we'll say dot query. We want to look for the courses table. And then we'll use the dot collect to gather them all. And to make sure that it is working, we can go console.log courses. It's a good troubleshooting practice. There we go. And inside of this handler, we'll go ahead and return courses. Perfect. Okay, so we have a get and a create course function set up. Let's go back to our front end and test it out. Okay, so sorry about that. I'll go ahead and close out these files and we'll go back to the home page. And I think we'll keep it as is. So inside of the home page, what I like to do is start by bringing in a few imports. So first thing, because this is a real-time database, we need to mark this as a client-side file because there's quite a bit of two-way communication between Convex and the application. It's always listening. Then we'll need to bring in our mutation and API. This is going to, I guess technically we really only need the query for right now to help us get the courses, and we'll focus on adding courses in a moment, but let's just work on just getting courses. So we'll say import, and remember to get a course, we need to use the query. So we'll say use query, and that should come from convex/react. And then of course, we certainly need to interact with the API. And this isn't, when you work with Convex, it's not done in a traditional way where you'll go slash courses slash whatever to get the API. You basically import API, and this is going to be coming from @/convex/ generated /API, because that's what we're looking for from our Convex backend. And this should be all that we need to actually get the courses if we have it in the database. So now inside of the default function, let's create a const named courses. And we'll set it equal to use query that we just brought in. Now inside of the query, we want to query the API. And what we're looking for is the table named course. And then inside of course, we have two functions. Remember, create course and get course. Because this is a query, we need to use the get course because we're looking to query, gather information. So this is going to give us the ability to get all of the courses out of the database in the event that we have some created. So now what I want to do is I want to display these courses within our home route. But let's say that we don't have any courses because we haven't added anything just yet. I want to send a message back to the user, just letting them know that, hey, you don't have any courses just yet. Go ahead and create one. And the way that we can kind of conditionally render this is by using our good old friend JavaScript. So inside of the div, remove homepage, and we'll add the curly braces. That's how we let our Next.js app know that we need to run some JavaScript. So we're going to say if the courses equal, and that's 3 equals undefined, because that is a state of the course of the courses that we're going to be gathering from the database. What we want to do is send something back to the user. So we'll say question mark, then parentheses, and I'm just going to put a div and give it a closing tag. And we'll go class name, height full, flex column, justify center, item center. And in the screen, we'll just type loading courses with 3 dots. Oh, let's be sure to set the height to full. Sorry. There we go. Oh, I had already set it full. Sorry. Now, outside of this parentheses, we need to care for another state. So we're going to add the quotation marks, not quotation, semicolon marks, double semicolon. I can't think of its correct term. I'm sorry. We want to care for if we don't have any courses in the database. So now we'll say courses dot length, length, yep, is equal to 0. And do the question mark. Then we want to say, and I'll just copy this, and we'll say, we'll send a different message to the user. No courses available. Add your first course today. Okay. And then finally, in the event we do have courses, for right now, I just want to demonstrate, I just want to show the courses on screen. And I almost forgot I got to map over this first. So we'll say courses.map. And for each of the courses, we're going to name it course. We'll pass in or return a div inside of this. We'll give it a key of course dot then it's underscore ID. And then inside of the div, we'll just pass in course dot title. Click save. Now let's go to our home page and see what we get. So if I recall, I don't think we've loaded our server just yet. Nope. So we'll go back to the terminal and we'll open a new terminal because we have Convex running in the first one, and just type in npm run dev to start the server on the local host. We can close that out for right now. And I'm just going to go to localhost 3000 and refresh the page. We'll give it a moment to load up. Now, what we should see is a message on screen stating that we don't have any courses available because we don't have any just yet. So as you saw, if I refresh, you should see loading courses, and then no courses available. Add your first course today. Perfect. But for some reason, oh, I see why. Sorry, I need to make the first div, give it a height of full, so it'll be in the middle of the screen. Let me save this. That div is a height of full. And let me set this one, class height full. Still not. You know what? Let's do this. Okay, well, doesn't want a center for me today, it looks like. Class name, height, full, flush, between center. Sorry. Center. And center. There we go. So we see that we have no courses available. Add your first course today. So what I want to do is let's just make sure that this is working before we add the ability to add a course from our project. We'll go back to our Convex database. And if you go to the dashboard, once you've logged in, you should see your latest project created. Remember, I named mine My Live Study Buddy. If we click on data, we don't see anything just yet. So let's go ahead and just add the ability to add a course from our project. That'll probably make it a little easier. So for right now, let's just go back to the root directory and let's add a folder named UI. And in it, we'll add a file named new course btn.tsx. We'll mark this as use client. And if you're using React, I would highly recommend you have the React snippet installed. It makes adding or creating quick functions super simple. So the way I'm going to create mine would be by typing in RAFCE. And if you press tab, it should automatically generate a export default function. And we just need to update the name. So for this component, I'm going to name it new course BTN. Press save. Let's go ahead and import this into our home page. So at the top of our page.tsx file, let's import new course BTN. And as I typed in new, it was the very first option. We'll import it. And then inside of the course map, let's copy this, delete it, and we'll add a div. So it is held within the div. We'll paste it in. Hold on. Let me think for a second. I think we can do it like that because it's looking for the map. Let's see something. No, we'll come outside of the div. And I tell you what, I actually think I can add this to the bottom of this. This will be fine right here for right now. We'll say new course BTN, click save. And if we go back to localhost, okay. How do I want to do this? We'll say this and go back to the page.tsx. And I think what I'm going to do is say, well, I'm not going to worry about the styling too much of this right now. So for right now, let's just go ahead and comment out the query to get the database or the information from the database. And we have just the new course BTN right there. That is perfectly fine for what we're looking to do. So let's go back to the new course BTN component. And we already have it marked as use client. So let's go ahead and start by importing the API. And this is going to come from @/convex/_generated API, just as it was in our home page. Then we want to bring in the mutation. So we'll say use mutation. That's going to come from convex/react. And for right now, we'll go ahead and bring in the router and redirect us as well since that's ultimately what we're looking to do. And this is going to come from Next Navigation. So inside of the new course BTN component, let's start by creating a const named create course. And we're going to set it equal to use mutation. And remember, we need to access the API, the course, and what the course file. And then what we want is create course. And then underneath this const, we want to create another const named router. And we'll set it equal to use router. And we'll be sure to call it. And then now to make this super simple, let's just create a quick const that we can attach to a button so that if the user clicks the button, a course is created and we redirect the user. So we'll say const on create and set it equal to async. And then inside of this, let's add a const named promise, promise, and set it equal to create create course. And every time we create a course, we know that we need to have a title. And instead of passing this to a form, I'm just going to create it right here. And we'll say for the title, we'll just say live test. So every course we create is going to initially start with a name of live test. So I do want to have some toast notifications. And I know that that's a little bit, may not be 100% relevant to just getting started with the quick Convex app, but I'd love to have it. And I like to use Sonner. So we'll just type in inside of the terminal npmi Sonner, and that is SONNER, and press enter. And this is a quick, simple, easy, light notification package that works just about with every framework, or JavaScript framework, I should say, that I've tested it out with without an issue. So we have it installed, and then now we just need to give it access throughout the app. So if you go to the app folder, then layout.tsx, at the very top, let's go ahead and bring in Sonner. So we'll say import. Nope, it's without the brackets. Sorry. Import Sonner. No, let me see something. Let's see. Sonner. Yep. Okay. Oh, it's toaster. Sorry. And that is in brackets. I'm not one crazy. Toaster. And that's coming from Sonner. Yep. And then inside of the convex wrapper, just add toaster. And then we'll need to set the position of this. And again, this is something that's totally optional. I just like to put mine in a certain position. So the position of it is going to be top center, but you can place it bottom right, bottom left, top right, whatever works for you. Then we'll click save, and we can close out the layout. And then now let's import toast. And that is lowercase toast, and that's going to come from Sonner. And then now inside of our onCreate function, let's add a little bit more to it just to get a little notification. So underneath, or excuse me, we don't want to close out the parentheses for create toast or create title, excuse me, create course with creating a title. We'll add .then. And what we want to do is grab the course ID, and we'll say first that it was a success to let the user know that it was created successfully. And the message we're going to send back to the user is new course created. And then we'll use the router to push us to /dashboard. slash the course ID. So make sure you are using temporal literals inside of push. I just realized I wasn't, and that should be course ID. It should look like this. Okay. Now, anytime we're using .den, we need to prepare and care for any potential errors. So we'll say .catch and be sure that this is outside of the .den. And we'll say, and this is in the event we get an error or something goes wrong, we'll say toast, and I think this is .error. Yep, failed to create the course. And then finally, outside of the catch, we'll say toast.promise, P-R-O-M-I-S-E. We'll go with loading. If the state is loading, we'll say creating course. When it is successful, we'll say new course created. And then in the event we get an error, we'll just send back failed, in parentheses, failed to create course. Click save. So now with this, we have all of the functionality that we're looking for to create a quick course. So inside of the return statement, we can replace the div with a button. And we'll just give this a name of create course. Inside of the button, I'm not worried about the styling necessarily right now. We want to use this on create function every time we click. So we're going to use the event handler of on click, and we'll pass in the on create function and we'll save it. Now, the only thing we need to do before we test this out is create this specific route, because we want to make sure that we're redirecting the user in the event that we successfully created a new course. So we'll go ahead and set that up now, and we'll also use some querying to make sure that we're getting the appropriate ID and everything is flowing through properly. So inside of the main app directory, let's create a group folder first, and you just create a regular folder and a group, we'll create a group folder. And the way you create a group folder is by adding parentheses around the folder name. So for this project, I'm going to create a group of dashboard. You know what? Let's just make this main, M-A-I-N. And then inside of this, I'm going to go ahead and just drag my page.tsx inside of the main folder. And that is all we're going to do with it for right now. We'll close out the page.tsx. Yep. And then inside of the main group folder, I'm going to add a dashboard folder or directory. And then inside of it, I'm going to add a file. We won't worry about a file right now. Inside of the dashboard routes or folder, I'm going to add a new folder that is going to represent or be a dynamic route. So if it is dynamic, we use brackets. So I'm going to do open bracket, and we're going to be looking for the ID. So we'll pass in ID, then close brackets. Now, inside of the dashboard/ID directory, let's add a file named page.tsx. And this will represent the individual course page where we can see the course ID, update the course, and eventually manipulate and add various quizzes and lessons and things like that to the course. So this will be a client-side file as well. So we'll start by marking this as use client. And we just need to import the API. And it's a good best practice to bring in the ID as well, but I'm not going to worry about it just to test this out for right now. I do want to bring in use query. Okay. And I think we're going to need params. So let's import use params, and this is going to come from next navigation. And I think that's all we'll need for right now, but we can always add more if need be. Let's create a quick functional component using the RAFCE snippet, and we'll just name this file single course page. Click save. Now inside of the component, let's go ahead and create a const named params so that we can get the params and the ID. And then we'll say the const course ID is equal to hold on, params with a question mark because we may not get it, dot ID. And we want to pass this as a string. And I think that is all that I need for right now to do what I need to do. So we'll say if there's no course ID, we want to redirect the user back to the home page. That would make the most sense. So with use params, let's go ahead and bring in use router. Then underneath the course ID, we'll say const router is equal to use router, and be sure to call it. So now inside of the if statement, we'll say router.push, and we're going to push the user back to the slash dashboard page in the event there is no course ID. But I think, you know what, let's go ahead and do it the right way. Let's go ahead and bring in the ID from Convex. And this is going to make sure that we are grabbing the ID properly from the database and we don't have any type errors. Convex is very strict about making sure you care for type safety, so you're giving good information to the database. So I figured it'd probably make more sense just to show it the right way versus the faster way, just to get us going. So underneath the course ID, let's create a const, and I'm going to name this document ID. And this is going to be the ID that we just imported from the Convex data model. And what we want is the courses. And we'll say course ID as ID for courses. Okay. Then we'll say const course is equal to use query. And remember, when we're querying, we want to reach out to the API course, and we'll need to set a individual course or grab the course by ID. I realize we only did create and get. So let's go ahead and establish a function within the API for the individual course ID. So we'll go back to our Convex directory, and inside of the course.tsx file, I think this is probably the best place to store this. So what we want to do now is just create a function to get the individual course by its ID. So we'll say export const get course by ID. And this will be a query because we're going to be querying or looking for information from the database. And we'll say args, the ID is v.id, and this is for courses, and come outside of that parentheses and outside of that quotation and the parentheses and bracket. And then underneath args, let's make it off screen for you, we'll type handler. And remember, this is async because we have to wait for it to establish a connection and do the query. So there'll be CTX, and the second argument we're going to pass in is ID. and we'll come outside of that parentheses, and inside of the brackets, we'll say const course is equal to await ctx.db dot, and the method we want is get, and we want to get the ID. And then inside of the handler, in the event we don't have a course, we'll say throw new error, course not found. Click save. Then outside of this if statement, just be sure to return the course. Click save. And we can close this out for right now. I think I might add delete, knowing me. But we can close it out for right now. And then we'll go back to the page.tsx, the single course page. And if we begin to type in, I think we named this get, we should, so if we start by typing G, the second option should be course by ID, which is the function that we just created. And this is going to allow us to get this specific course based on the ID that we created. And I'm getting a little error here. It says it's waiting on two. Oh, duh. Because after the ID, sorry, you have to pass in the ID that you're actually using to look for a course. Sorry about that. And then it's always a good best practice to care for the different states, especially if you're going to production. So we'll say if the course is equal to null, we'll say router dot push. We want to push the user back to dashboard and return null. Outside of that if statement, if the course is equal to, and that's 3 equals, if it's equal to undefined, this is the one that we want to go with loading. And I'm not going to worry about it mirroring the other one. We're going to build our own later. So we'll say loading, click save, and I will go class height full, justify center, flex column, item centered. I think that's enough. Okay. And then if it is not null or undefined, I mean, it probably doesn't exist. So let's care for that one too. So we'll say if no course ID, we simply want to go router.push and push the user back to the dashboard. Okay. And for this, all I want to do is just make sure that we are getting that information from the database. So I'm just going to go course ID, and we'll say course ID, and then we'll say title, course dot title. Okay. Now let's test it all out. And I think we've got everything done. So now let's go back to our local host and go to our next app. And we'll click create course. You see the new course is created. We got the notification and we've been redirected. And we see we have a course title of live test. And we have a course ID that ends in AK5. So if I go to my Convex database, and we'll just refresh it. Sorry, I was in production. I should have been in development. But if you didn't make the same mistake I made, you should see your courses table listed there and the course that we just created. So let's make sure that we can get this information. So I'm gonna go back to the page.tsx for the root route. So that's in the app directory. Yep, I moved it to main. Click on page.tsx. I'm going to remove the new course btn and let's uncomment out and save this. And if we go back to our local host, you see the course that we created, the name of it, live test, is on screen. So it is capturing the data from the database. So with that, that completes today's quick video of connecting a Next.js application to a Convex database. Tomorrow or in the next video, what we'll do is we'll focus on the actual styling and layout of the project. So we'll go ahead and bring in the sidebar, the header, and give it a little more user-friendly design, and we'll take care of that in the next video. But with that said, we'll call it a night, and I'll see you in the next one.